Hi, it's Christina Selishenko from the Proverbs 31 Woman blog and author of A Vegetable for Every Season cookbook. It's a beautiful spring day here, and now is a great time to start trying to incorporate more vegetables into your diet. Spring and summer and fall are the times when you're going to find the most variety of vegetables. Spring is a good time to find greens, and by greens I mean kale, collards, mustard greens, beet and turnip greens, which are just the leafy tops, and yes, dandelion greens, which are just the leaves off of the plants you find on your lawn. You do want to make sure you catch those before they start throwing up buds, however, or they get pretty bitter for this recipe in particular. Any time of year, though, you can usually find greens. You can grow them through the winter if you have a relatively mild climate. You don't have a lot of snow. If you do get a lot of snow, you can still grow them in the winter. You just want some kind of tunnel. It doesn't have to be a greenhouse, just some kind of tunnel where you have, say, PVC hoops and some fabric over them, and that gives them just enough warmth to stay there through the winter, so you can have your leafy greens all winter long, which I just love. They're really nutritious. They're yummy if you cook them right. And this recipe is really easy, so it's I think, the perfect beginner's recipe. If you've never tried greens before, if you've never cooked them before, this is so quick, so easy, and so yummy. I hope you will try it. Alright, so we're going to make some sauteed greens. These happen to be collard greens, which I love. The only other things you're going to need are some olive oil, pepper, and salt. Very simple. Oh, and some garlic. Don't let me forget the garlic. Now, the first thing you're going to do is, if you've purchased big leaves or if you've let them grow in your gardens where they're quite large, they're going to have these quite thick stems that are not going to cook at the same rate as those nice thin leaves. So the first thing you want to do is just cut those out, and then stack your leaves like this. And now I'm going to roll them into a cigar shape and cut them into strips. Okay, and that's what it looks like when I'm all done. Again, I just roll the leaves into a cigar-like shape and cut strips. You can do it another way if you want, but the idea is to get relatively thin strips. You can kind of get an idea here about the size, and that just happens to be a really quick way to do it. Okay, now I have taken 4 garlic cloves and I minced them. Please, please, please don't use the bottled minced stuff. It just isn't going to taste nearly as good because it's not as fresh. Go ahead and buy yourself one of these. As you can see, this is a rather old and well-used garlic mincer, but they're simple and they do the job so well, and they're cheap. There's just no reason not to do it because it'll make your food taste so much better. And to that, I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now, this is coarse salt. I happen to like that. It's sea salt. If you want to use some other kind of salt that isn't coarse, you're going to need to use a little bit less. So I'm just going to pour that in there. And then I just sort of mix it up, making sure that the salt is well blended in with the garlic. Okay, making kind of a paste. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add a tablespoon of olive oil to the pan. Some people tell me that they prefer to use butter. If you like a really buttery flavor, that's probably okay. Sometimes I will use bacon drippings. That adds a ton of flavor to greens, and it's kind of a traditional way to cook them. And if you want, you can actually fry up a few strips of bacon and save the drippings, and while you're draining the bacon on paper towels, you can crumble it and put it on top of the greens when you're all done, and that is also very delicious, although slightly less healthy. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put my garlic mixture in this oil, but I'm going to let the oil warm up just a little bit first. Once it's warm, we'll add the garlic. Okay, the oil started to sizzle a little, so I went ahead and I added my garlic mixture, and I'm just going to cook that for like 30 seconds. When you start smelling a good garlicky flavor, you know it's time to add your greens. So I'm just going to take a handful at a time and add them. And by the way, if you're wondering how many greens to use in this recipe, one bunch, which is basically a handful when they're uncut leaves, is what you're going to use. The weight will vary. It's not super precise. You can use a little more, a little less. Kind of the same thing with the garlic. I do recommend that you try it with the garlic first, as I've said, 4 cloves. But if you really love garlicky taste, you might want to add more. And if you try it and it seems too garlicky, you probably need to eat more garlic, because garlic's good for you. Plus it's yummy. But you can always add a little less too. So I'm just kind of saute these. Cook and stir once in a while. And what I'm looking for is for these greens to turn bright green and to wilt. And then they're going to be done. See how fast this is? So I turned off the camera just long enough to add some freshly ground pepper. It is best if it is freshly ground from a pepper mill, but you know, use whatever you have on hand. It'll be fine. And you can start to see, I think, that these are well coated with oil. They're starting to turn a nice bright green, so we're just waiting for them to wilt. So I think you can see that these are now wilted down quite a bit. How long it takes for them to wilt down really depends on what exactly you're cooking. If I was doing dandelion leaves, those aren't as thick, and so they're going to cook a lot faster. These were pretty thick, so it only took, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half at the very most. And I'm just going to finish spooning these up, and I'll show you what it looks like. So, we've gone from the uncooked greens to the cooked greens in, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes at the very most. It doesn't get much better than that. And it made quite a plateful. I'll share this with my kids. Yes, they love their greens, especially if they come from our own garden. So if you would like the printed recipe for this, check out my cookbook, A Vegetable for Every Season by Christina Selashenko. It's very affordably priced. It has 155 plus recipes in it. Some are vegetarian, some are not, and there's lots of little tips for cooking and gardening in it too. I wish we had Taste-O-Vision because you're going to love these. See you next time. Bye-bye.